I'm going to talk about mental health stigma and discrimination. What is mental health stigma? Mental health stigma is a negative attitude or stereotype about people with mental illness. It can lead to discrimination, prejudice, and social isolation. Mental health stigma can make it difficult for people to seek help for their mental health problems. And I think we all know somebody who has waited too long and things have ended up the wrong way because they were just so afraid. We stigmatize ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves when we're struggling. Reasons why people might stigmatize mental health include the belief that mental illness is a sign of weakness or personal failure. People fear mental illness because they don't understand what it is. They don't understand it. Misconception of all people with mental illness. People think that anybody who has mental illness is dangerous, partly because that's the only picture we have had of a mentally unwell person. And of course, people do not understand mental illness. So that means that we really need to understand mental illness better. We need to make this a table topic, really, where we can all be vulnerable with each other and realize that we all struggle. So let's talk about some of the ways people are discriminated against when they struggle with mental illness. And that is in employment. A lot of people who have mental illness are highly likely to be underemployed or unemployed. Most people are so afraid for their medical records to show up to their employer because they know that they're going to be discriminated against. They might also be passed over for promotions and jobs. And then there's the housing situation. Imagine if you have a neurodivergent child who might have emotional dysregulation. It's highly likely that you will struggle with housing because your neighbors are complaining about the noise in the house, especially if you're on an upstairs apartment. I mean, people might be evicted because of the mental health conditions. And then there's the education piece. People are denied admissions to schools or colleges based on their mental health issues. They might be placed in special education classes because of their mental health conditions. I don't know whether you know, but Thomas Edison was classified as a mentally unwell person. So what happened is his mom decided to educate him. People with mental illness are also discriminated against in healthcare settings. You would think that that is where they get the most acknowledged, but no, they receive a lot of discrimination in healthcare settings, in the ability to receive care. Half of them are underemployed, so they don't have insurance, and for that reason, they are not privy to the best healthcare there is. And then, of course, in social relationships, most people feel isolated because of their mental illness. How often will you hear somebody, being ostracized because they have suffered a manic episode? They can also be victims of violence in their own social environments because they are misunderstood, right? So why should we talk about it? Why should we talk about discrimination and stigmatization of mental illness? And that's because mental health stigma can have a devastating impact on people's lives. And it also prevents help seeking because people are afraid. They're afraid of the stigmatization at their work, at their social environments, at their employers. I have a lot of, in our institution, we have 10 free sessions of mental health services, right? Most people don't want to take advantage of that because they are afraid that it will be connected to their employer, and then their employer will discriminate against them based on the findings of those visits. But I'm here to say that that is not true. those records do not go back to the employer. So do not afraid to seek help in that sense. And then, of course, we want to decrease social isolation that can be associated with pre-existing mental health issues. Most people will isolate because they don't want to be found out, because they don't want to be ostracized. They don't want to be the butt of all jokes in the community. So they will isolate. And then, of course, we want to talk about it because we want to improve employability. We want table topics such as mental health support, And we also want to encourage people to talk about these things so that people can stop feeling ashamed, guilty for having conditions that, anybody can have, you and I can have. And how can we go about that? I say we need to educate. We need to educate ourselves and others, dispel the myths about mental illness and the stereotypes that come with it. We need to challenge negative attitudes about mental illness when you hear them. So if you hear somebody talking about somebody being crazy for, having a mental health issue, I think take it upon you to dispel that myth if you understand what mental illness entails. And of course, speak up. Share your experiences or provide accurate information on mental illness. I think when we share our experience through vulnerability, we help other people open up. And I always say that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. It's really hard for you to open up to somebody who is closed off and does not express their own vulnerability. And support people with mental illness. Be that friend, be that family member, be that colleague who is understanding and who is supportive of somebody who is struggling. Because without support, I think we are all culpable. We are all responsible. And then advocate. May has been Mental Health Awareness Month, and advocacy has been part of my personal goal, and that is to advocate for mental health rights, speak out against discrimination, normalize mental health, make it available in these platforms so that people can see themselves through the eyes of everybody else that suffers with mental illness. So, in summary, mental health stigma is a serious, serious problem. But it's nothing no one can not overcome. By educating people with mental illness, by challenging negative stereotypes, by supporting people with mental illness, we can help create a more accepting and supportive society. By taking these steps, we can help to create a more accepting and supportive society for people with mental illness. So I am here to dispel those myths. I am here to be that support system. And let me tell you, I have been vilified by some people even in the platform for talking about mental health. But I will not stop talking about it. Because if you have not met somebody who has lost a loved one to mental health, then you cannot sit and tell somebody not to seek care. If you have not lost a child, a father, a sister, a sibling, a brother, a cousin, a friend, if you have not lost anybody due to the effects of mental illness, you cannot talk. And if you're struggling with mental illness, there is help. And some of us are here for you. We are here and we are willing to be beaten to the pulp because we are here for the fight. We are here. We are creating these table topics. We are making it known that mental illness is here and support is also here to stay. So, who's going to join me in this? Follow for more. I'm always going to be here.